Welcome to Reporter's Notebook, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle. I'm joined today by White House reporter Haisten Willis. Haisten, President Biden was under a certain amount of pressure to come out and talk about all of these flying objects that in some cases the U.S. military has had to shoot out of the sky. He's finally done so. What did he have to say?
Yeah, I don't know how many answers he really clarified or how much clarity he provided on the situation. Obviously, yeah, there was the first balloon over the U.S., I believe it to be from China. Was allowed to fly the way across the United States and then was shot down off the coast of South Carolina. And they said there were certain reasons they let it go. But then the next weekend there were three, they said much smaller objects that were shot down right away, toward the west of the U.S. They are not allowed to fly across. There's been a lot of questions about that. Well, how were these different? Why were those shot down, versus this other one that was allowed to fly over? And they've had different responses about this one, the size, whether or not they had propulsion, how high or low they were. But obviously there were a lot of calls for the president himself to talk about these things, which has been kind of a common thing. There have been calls for Biden himself to speak more and have more press conferences. So he did finally speak and had, I guess you could say, a press conference, had some prepared remarks about what's going on there. He didn't really provide a lot of clarity, though, provided sort of a TikTok or a timeline of what happened. He talked about protocols, but didn't really say specifically what the items were, which is probably still some of the biggest mysteries. What exactly was what it was that was shot down?
I mean, some of these details had been provided by other government entities before, the Pentagon, the State Department, some of the White House team in daily briefings. But there was a desire to hear from the president himself. Is the White House maybe not being quite as transparent in its handling of Biden's access to the public as they could be?
Yeah, I mean, it would of course depend on who you ask. The people at the White House say that yes, well, we speak, we provide information. Karine Jean-Pierre, the press secretary, has press conferences or press briefings several days a week. But right, we're not hearing as much.
Sometimes she even takes questions at them.
Sometimes, yes. But yeah, how often we hear from Biden himself, and even the remarks he made on the items that were shot down, he did not take any questions afterward. It seemed like he was going to. There was a lot of reporters shouting at him, and I think there were some questions that he didn't like that maybe made him. Perhaps he would have taken a question or two if that didn't happen. Either way, he didn't take one.
He used the old Kit Kat advertising slogan, "Give me a break."
He did. Yeah, this question, I think it was about Hunter Biden in China that he took particular umbrage to and kind of walked off the stage. Either way, he didn't take a question. And then, he didn't do a Super Bowl interview. Hasn't given a full press conference in quite a while. So those questions are, I think, going to persist about access to Biden himself, not just people who are supposed to speak for him.
And then, of course, it took multiple requests to get the public address on the flying objects. There's also all of the briefings about the documents. People are always asking questions and being referred elsewhere. And then it took 15 months to get results of his physical exam for that to be completed.
Yeah, I think all this, kind of ties together. There's certainly a pattern here of kind of slow responses. I mean, depending on who you're speaking to, asking, but certainly people make accusations, I guess, of slow responses to things. And then when they do come, they're coming through people who are spokespeople, like I said, Karine Jean-Pierre, not the president himself, where he's not asking. Having press conferences, either having one at the end of the year around Christmas time, that didn't happen either.
Right.
Like I said, no Super Bowl interview. So there's definitely kind of a pattern of less transparency than at least some people would like.
Right. Sure. I mean, they do often emphasize that he does take shouted questions after he's spoken in a number of public settings, and that when he's getting ready to go in the helicopter and he's walking on the White House lawn, he takes reporter questions.
Yeah, that does happen, and from time to time he's walking out to the helicopter, like you said, or at the end of his speech, he'll answer a question or two, but that's still, I mean, there's always up to interpretation, but those are usually like one or two questions, and he'll give like a very short, very short answer to those. So
it's
very
not
different
the
than
same as a sit-down interview. And sometimes the one-word answers raise as many questions as they resolve.
Yeah. I mean, for example, just a few weeks ago, they announced that they were going to end the COVID-19 emergency in May, and then somebody asked him about that as he's walking out to the helicopter, like you mentioned, and he said the COVID emergency will end when the Supreme Court ends it, which was contradictory to what they had announced. I think it was just one day before, and there wasn't really a lot of clarity there. So that kind of raises as many questions as it answered. But yeah, I mean, last January, over a year ago now, he had a very, very lengthy press conference where he took tons and tons of questions. There hasn't been anything like that since then.
So the president is going on a major foreign trip to mark the one-year anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Where is he going?
Yeah, he's heading back to Poland, where he went once before, much earlier in the war, of course, and made some remarks. I think he's going to do something pretty similar there, go to Poland, give a speech, show solidarity and things like that. Of course, the war seems to be going pretty well from the Ukrainian perspective, and the U.S., of course, is providing a lot of backing and financial backing to the Ukrainian side. So, and General Mark Milley even said that Russia, quote, has lost, I think I have that quote right, has lost the war.
Right.
Things seem to be going pretty well, but Biden wants to continue showcasing that support.
Right, and obviously, while the Ukrainians have exceeded expectations and the Russian offensive hasn't gone particularly well, the Russians are still in Ukraine.
They are, yeah, definitely. And there are fears that, of course, we're in kind of the dead of winter now, but things are going to start warming up pretty soon. There are fears that Russia could launch a new invasion or a new fresh wave, I guess. There's always the question of tactical nuclear weapons and things like that as well. And the bigger question seems to be emerging. Everyone seems to kind of agree this is going well from the Ukrainian side, but what's the end game? What's our exit strategy here? How much money do we really want to allocate to this? It's tough questions to ask because there's pretty widespread support, I guess, among Americans that Ukraine is the right side to support here.
Right.
But the question of how much and how deep and how long that support lasts is a little bit more iffy.
Thank you, Haisten.
Sure.
You can read Haisten and the rest of our political team's coverage at washingtonexaminer.com.